I grew up in a small, quiet town where life moved at an easy, predictable pace. On the surface, nothing much seemed to happen, but underneath, there was always drama bubbling in the background. My parents were traditionalists, my father, a strict, no-nonsense law enforcement officer who believed in discipline above all else, and my mother, the warm, nurturing force in our family, always lending a hand at the community center. From an early age, I was taught the value of structure and integrity, principles that would later be tested more times than I ever could have imagined. The first crack in my belief in honesty came when I was 12. My best friend, James, lied about breaking my dad's prized fishing rod. It wasn't just the lie, it was the way he looked me in the eye and denied it, like our friendship meant nothing. When I accidentally discovered the truth and confronted him, he brushed it off as if it didn't matter. Maybe it was trivial in the grand scheme of things, but to me, it planted something deep inside, mistrust. And that mistrust never really left me. By high school, James was just another face in the crowd, a distant memory of a friendship that had once mattered. That was when I found my passion, civil engineering. There was something satisfying about designing structures meant to last, things that wouldn't crumble under pressure. Around the same time, I met Sophia. She sat next to me in sophomore science class, a sharp, witty girl with a knack for technology and a confidence that made people take notice. We started out as friends, teaming up on projects, eating lunch together, and gradually, something more began to develop between us. By junior year, we were inseparable. Sophia became more than just my girlfriend. She was my closest friend, my partner in everything. We spent weekends on road trips, pulled all-nighters studying, and made plans for a future we both believed in. By senior year, I was convinced what we had was special, something strong enough to withstand anything. But over time, subtle shifts began to appear. Sophia, once so present and engaged, started pulling away. Our dinners together became infrequent, canceled with vague excuses about school or work. She seemed distant, her laughter less frequent, her eyes unreadable. At first, I chalked it up to stress. She was ambitious, after all, always pushing herself to succeed. But the more I tried to ignore the feeling, the stronger it grew. Something wasn't right. Weeks passed, and those nagging suspicions turned into undeniable signs. The late nights, the unreturned calls, the way she looked through me instead of at me. And then, on a day like any other, everything unraveled. I stood by my car, parked near license plate 128, waiting. The door creaked open, and they stepped out, Sophia and him. Their movements were deliberate, cautious. Sophia's eyes flicked to mine before darting away, her face draining of color like she'd been caught red-handed. The guy beside her shifted uncomfortably, raising his hands slightly, as if preparing for a fight. I gave him nothing. My voice was calm, steady. Relax. Neither of you are worth the trouble. Without waiting for a response, I turned, got into my car, and drove off, leaving them standing there with nothing but their guilt. The road to that moment had been a long one. Ethan and I had been best friends since childhood, practically brothers. He moved in next door when we were 8, and since we were the only boys our age in a neighborhood full of girls, we naturally stuck together. By the time we hit high school, we had each other's backs in everything: sports, fights, and every stupid decision in between. By senior year, nothing had changed. Ethan was dating Charlotte Spears, and the four of us, Ethan, Charlotte, Sophia, and me, spent most weekends together. We even double-dated at prom. That night, Sophia and I took the next step in our relationship in one room, while Ethan and Charlotte did the same in another. After graduation, life pulled us in different directions. Ethan enlisted in the Navy, a decision that sent Charlotte into a tailspin. She screamed at him, calling him selfish, but in the end, she promised to wait for him. Sophia and I went to college, me at Eastern Michigan for civil engineering, her at the University of Michigan for IT. Our campuses were just 30 minutes apart, close enough to keep things going. At first, we made it work. But then, the cracks started forming. Small things at first. Sophia canceled plans more often, claiming she had too much studying to do. Friends at her school hinted at something else. I didn't want to believe it, until the night I saw it for myself. I showed up unannounced, wanting to surprise her. Instead, I was the one surprised. I watched from a distance as she climbed into another guy's car. I followed them to a restaurant on Ann Arbor Road, waiting outside for 10 minutes before walking in. They were tucked away in a corner booth, sitting close, too comfortable. His arm rested around her shoulders, and she didn't pull away. I sat at a nearby booth, deliberately loud when I ordered my food. Her reaction was instant. Her body stiffened, her eyes widened, and she quickly shoved his arm off her like she could erase what I had already seen. The guy just looked confused. He wasn't panicked, he was comfortable, like this wasn't the first time. She just hadn't planned on getting caught. I didn't make a scene. I finished my meal in silence, never looking at her again, then walked out. The next day, I skipped our usual Friday night date without an explanation. I turned off my phone and spent the evening in complete silence, letting it all sink in. On Saturday, I went to a frat party, where I met Bella, a gorgeous brunette with a sharp wit and a dangerous smile. I got her number. Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Sophia stood there, waiting. She barely waited for the door to open before pushing past me, her tone sharp and demanding. "Where were you Friday night? Why didn't you answer your phone?" Leaning casually against the doorframe, I met her glare with a calm expression. "Which question do you want me to answer first?" Her brows furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You asked 3 questions," I said evenly. "Pick one." She crossed her arms, her frustration building. "Don't play games, Rob." "What's going on?" I sighed, pushing off the doorframe. "Fine. Friday night, I stayed in. Saturday, I went to a party. And my phone? I turned it off." Her posture stiffened. "Why didn't you call me if you weren't coming?" I met her gaze without hesitation. "I figured you already had other plans with your boyfriend." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "You're my boyfriend." "Then who was the guy at the restaurant Thursday night?" I asked, arms crossed. She stammered. "He's just a friend." I scoffed. "A friend who sits pressed up against you with his arm around your shoulders?" My voice sharpened. "If it was so innocent, why didn't you come over and say hi? Maybe introduce us?" She fired back immediately. "Why didn't you come over if it bothered you so much?" I let out a humorless chuckle. "Because I wanted to see how you acted when you didn't know I was watching." Her frustration erupted. "Why would you do that?" "Because people keep telling me you're seeing other guys," I said, my patience wearing thin. I needed to see it for myself. Her arms flung into the air. "You don't own me, Rob. We never agreed to an exclusive relationship." I stared at her, stunned. "I thought we did. I gave you my class ring and Letterman jacket as a sign of commitment." She let out a sigh, shaking her head as if I was naive. "That's high school stuff, Rob. It doesn't mean anything now." I nodded slowly, letting the truth sink in. "Fair enough. If it doesn't mean anything to you, then it doesn't mean anything to me." I took a breath before adding, "I met someone at the party Saturday. She gave me her number. Maybe I'll call her." Sophia's face twisted in anger. "Fine. Do what you want," she snapped before storming out. As I watched her leave, I realized something: she hadn't apologized, hadn't tried to explain, hadn't even pretended to care about fixing things. To her, the rules had changed, and I had simply been too blind to notice. It hurt to let go of someone I'd been with for so long, but dragging it out would have been worse. With everything going on earlier in the week, I didn't get around to calling Bella until Thursday. We talked for a while and set up a date for Friday night. She was fun, easygoing, and didn't waste time with drama. That night, after dinner, she suggested skipping the movie we had planned and heading to a party she'd heard about. It was at an apartment in Belleville. We arrived a little after 8, and as fate would have it, the first people I saw when we walked in were Sophia and the guy she had been with the previous week. "Oh, great," I muttered under my breath. Bella caught the shift in my expression immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, leaning in. I gave a small nod in their direction. "Them." Her eyes followed mine, then she frowned. "Do you know them?" I kept my voice low. "I know her." Bella gave me a puzzled look. "And?" I hesitated, then smirked. "Ever heard of Miss Piggy?" Bella blinked. "Miss Piggy? That's her nickname." "Yep," I confirmed. She still looked confused. "Why?" I sighed. "Let's just say she's got a reputation. Someone started calling her that, and it stuck." Bella raised a skeptical brow. "Are you sure she deserves it?" I shrugged. "What else do you call a girl who claims she's committed to her boyfriend but sneaks around with other guys when he's not around?" Her expression hardened slightly. "Do you know that for a fact?" I exhaled. "Not firsthand, but enough people have told me to believe it." Bella tilted her head, studying me. "And how exactly do you know her?" I hesitated before answering. "I was the guy she claimed she was going to marry," I said evenly. "At least, until I caught her with that guy last week." Bella's eyes widened slightly. Wow. So, fireworks tonight? Nope, I said with a shake of my head. We broke up on Sunday. It's over. She smirked. Be honest. What are the odds you'd have asked me out if last Thursday hadn't happened? I met her gaze with a small smile. Pretty slim. But Thursday did happen, and now we're here. Let's enjoy ourselves. She smiled, took my hand, and led me across the room to meet the host. Sophia, standing off to the side, noticed me immediately and froze. For the first time, I saw something in her face that almost looked like regret. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe she just hadn't expected to see me moving on so quickly. Either way, I ignored her. Bella introduced me to Victor and his wife, Artisan, and after some small talk, we grabbed drinks and headed to the basement, where the place had been turned into a dance floor. Bella and I spent most of the night dancing, talking, and meeting new people. Every now and then, I caught Sophia glancing my way, her expression unreadable. Around 11, Bella leaned in and whispered, I should probably call it a night. I've got things to do tomorrow. We said our goodbyes, and as I drove her home, she commented, Your ex spent a lot of time looking at you tonight. I shrugged. She was probably just surprised to see me there. Bella shook her head. No, I think she was uncomfortable seeing you with someone else. I smirked, unconcerned. That's her problem. She's the one who ended things. Bella studied me for a moment before nodding. Maybe so, but she didn't look happy about it. She'll have to get used to it, I said matter-of-factly. Bella turned to me, her lips curving into a teasing smile. So, does this mean I'll be seeing you again, or are you planning to date every girl you meet? I met her gaze, amused. I prefer one girl at a time. I had a great time tonight, and I'm definitely going to ask you out again. As long as you say yes, you'll be the only one. Bella raised an eyebrow, playful. And what if I'm not ready to settle down with just one guy? I grinned. Then you'll say no, and I'll find someone else. If that doesn't work out, I'll circle back to you. Rinse and repeat until I find someone who's all in. She laughed. That's an interesting approach. I smirked. It's an honest one. Bella laughed, her eyes glinting with amusement. I like your confidence. Let's give it a shot. How about tomorrow night? Perfect, I said, grinning. When we reached her door, she hesitated for a moment before smirking. I usually don't kiss on the first date, but I guess there's a first time for everything. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my lips. See you tomorrow. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. But that feeling didn't last long. As soon as I stepped through the door, Dad looked up from the couch. Sophia called, he said, his tone unreadable. She sounded upset. I shrugged. It's late. I'll deal with it in the morning. The next day, I slept in, not rolling out of bed until late morning. As I shuffled into the kitchen, Mom was waiting for me with a knowing look and a cup of tea. Sophia's already called twice, she said, her voice neutral, but her expression expectant. I yawned, making a beeline for the coffee pot. Not until I've had coffee. Mom arched an eyebrow. Things aren't going well between you two, huh? I took a slow sip before answering. It's not just us anymore. She tilted her head. Does she know that? She should, I said simply. She's the one who opened that door. Before she could respond, the phone rang again. Mom picked it up, listened for a second, then handed it to me. It's Sophia. I sighed, already exhausted. What? I answered, making no effort to mask my irritation. Why didn't you call? Sophia's voice was sharp, accusatory. I leaned against the counter. It was late when I got home, and I just woke up. That's not what I meant, she snapped. Why didn't you pick me up for our usual Friday date? I set my coffee down. We talked about this last Sunday, Sophia. You said we weren't exclusive anymore, remember? So, I took your advice. I started seeing other people. That's not what I meant, Rob, she said quickly. You should have known that. I let out a humorless chuckle. Don't give me that. I saw you with that guy last Thursday. I wasn't with him, Rob, she protested. I went to the party alone. He just happened to be there. Right? I said, my voice flat. And it was just coincidence that he had his arm around you. That's not true, she exclaimed, her voice shaking now. Whatever you've heard, it's all lies. I exhaled slowly. After what I saw at the restaurant, I don't believe you. And I'm done. There was a pause, and then I added, give me back my ring and Letterman jacket. They don't mean anything to you anyway. Silence stretched on the line. Then, in a quiet, almost resigned voice, she said, goodbye. I hung up, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. Mom, who had been listening from across the room, gave me a small nod. She made her choice, she said gently. And so did you. Life moved on. Bella and I started spending more time together, and around the same time, I began receiving letters from Ethan. He had completed boot camp and was training for the Navy SEALs. He never mentioned Charlotte, so I didn't bring her up either. Not that he would have wanted to know. Charlotte had been with a string of guys since he left. Eventually, she disappeared completely. The next I heard, Ethan had finished his training, was stationed in Norfolk, and planned to marry her. His letter read, "Wish you could be my best man, but we had to move fast to get on the base housing list." Poor guy, I thought. He had no idea what he was signing up for. The moment he walked out the door, someone else would be in her bed before the sound of it closing even faded. Thanks to a college fund set up by my grandparents, I wasn't struggling financially. It covered tuition and allowed me to rent an off-campus apartment. By my junior year, Bella and I decided to move in together. It was a glimpse into what married life might feel like, and honestly, I loved it. After 6 months of living together, I started thinking about taking the next step. But when I brought up the idea of her picking out an engagement ring, she blindsided me. After graduation, she planned to move back to California to marry her childhood sweetheart. He's in England on a Rhodes Scholarship, she explained. We agreed an exclusive relationship wasn't realistic with all this distance between us. He knows about you, and I know about the girl he's seeing. It shouldn't change anything for us in the short term. As if that was supposed to make me feel better. But of course, it did change things. Overnight, what I thought was a serious relationship turned into something temporary. And while I cared for Bella, I needed more than casual companionship. Over the next few months, the distance between us grew. Then, almost exactly 4 months later, she confronted me. "You don't want to be here anymore, do you?" I sighed. "I don't think I do." She nodded slowly, absorbing the truth. "I get it," she said softly. "I almost wish I didn't love Alex so much. If it weren't for him, you'd be my first choice." "Thanks, I guess," I said, attempting a smile. "So what now? Flip a coin to see who moves out." She shook her head. "No need. I've been expecting this. My mom hasn't rented out my old room yet. Says she's keeping it for me until I turn 40 or until she has grandkids. So, I'm the one leaving." She gave me a sad smile. "Friends. Always." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. Then, in a whisper, she asked, "One last night together?" A week later, I was back at home, adjusting to life without Bella. Friday night, I was working on an article for school when Mom called up the stairs. "Rob, someone's here to see you." I headed down, expecting one of my friends. Instead, I found Mom standing in the entryway, chatting with me. "Sophia." Mom glanced at me and smiled before disappearing into the kitchen. "I'll leave you two alone." Sophia stood there, shifting her weight, looking uncertain. "Hi, Rob." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Hi." She hesitated. "Can we talk?" Sophia shifted uneasily, hesitating before speaking. "Bella called me. She said you're back on the market and that I should hurry if I wanted to be first in line." I frowned, not bothering to hide my irritation. "Why would you even want to be in line?" She sighed, her eyes flickering with regret. "There wouldn't be a line if I hadn't been so stupid. Bella never would have existed in your life if I hadn't messed up." She took a deep breath. "I just want to come back to where I belong." "Where you belong?" I repeated, narrowing my eyes. She lifted her hand, revealing my class ring still on her finger. "I never gave this back," she said quietly, then added, "There's a party at Nina Parker's house tonight. Want to take me?" I hesitated for a beat, then nodded. "Sure." That night, at the party, Sophia made a spectacle of holding up her hand. "Just so everyone knows," she announced loudly, "I've reclaimed what's mine." The words didn't sit right with me, but I let it go. I had agreed to take her, after all. On the drive home, she was unusually quiet, staring out the window as if lost in thought. When I pulled up in front of her house, I finally broke the silence. "Do you want to go apartment hunting with me this weekend?" She turned, her brow furrowing. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" I gave her a small smile. "The thought has crossed my mind. Splitting rent will be cheaper than living in motels." She tilted her head, considering. Then she grinned. "Good. You've got a date." Sophia and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment halfway between Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. We turned the second bedroom into an office, her side cluttered with wires and computer parts, mine stacked with blueprints and engineering notes. Life settled into an easy routine. A month later, Ethan came home on leave. He and Charlotte often spent time with us, looking on the surface like a happy couple. For a while, I questioned whether I had misjudged Charlotte. Maybe she had changed. Then Ethan returned to Iraq. Charlotte wasted no time moving on. Within weeks, she had moved in with another guy. Not long after that, she was seen with yet another former boyfriend. The rumors about her throwing wild parties and engaging in all sorts of questionable behavior spread like wildfire. I thought about telling Ethan the truth. Sophia stopped me. "It's not our business," she said. "For all we know, Ethan and Charlotte have an open marriage." "That doesn't sound like Ethan," I argued. "Even if it's not," she countered, "do you really think he'll thank you for telling him? He loves her. He'll just blame you for ruining everything. Let it go." So I did. Ethan returned from Afghanistan just in time to be the best man at my wedding to Sophia. Not long after, he and Charlotte moved to Norfolk for the final months of his service. When he was discharged, they came back home, and Ethan found work at a construction company. For 2 years, everything seemed fine. They visited Sophia and me often, and there was no sign of trouble. Then Ethan accepted a 4-month job in Alaska. Charlotte wasted no time repeating history. This time, she took up with Ethan's boss, Victor Thornton. By the time Sophia and Charlotte crossed paths at a doctor's office, Charlotte was 7 weeks pregnant, even though Ethan had been gone for over 3 months. Ethan didn't hear it from Charlotte. He heard it through mutual acquaintances. He flew home unannounced, rented a car, and parked near his house. When he saw Victor enter, he waited 15 minutes before walking inside, digital camera in hand, ready to catch them in the act. 15 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. Victor Thornton was rushed to the hospital. When the police arrived, they were prepared to arrest Ethan until he showed them the photos on his camera. He had been using a Canon Rebel set to continue his shooting, and the images clearly showed Thornton lunging at him first. Whether Victor was trying to grab the camera or start a fight didn't matter. The pictures made it obvious that Ethan had acted in self-defense. The officers reviewed the evidence, accepted Ethan's version of events, and left. 20 minutes later, Charlotte walked out with a single suitcase and locked the door behind her. The divorce was quick and uneventful. But Ethan wasn't done. He filed a lawsuit against Thornton for alienation of affection. Then he hit him with a second suit, claiming Thornton had only hired him to send him out of town so he could pursue Charlotte. Victor Thornton could have settled out of court and avoided a scandal. Instead, he fought it. Big mistake. The case went public, and Thornton was exposed for what he had done. The jury ruled in Ethan's favor, awarding him $1.3 million. After court costs and taxes, Ethan walked away with over $750,000. He used the money wisely, paid off his house, installed an in-ground pool, and bought himself a brand new Ford F-350. Charlotte? She vanished. Rumors suggested she left town, but no one really cared enough to confirm it. Thornton, on the other hand, had to sell equipment and property just to cover the judgment. His reputation was in ruins, and his clients abandoned him. No one wanted to do business with a man who had betrayed one of his own employees. With his bank account sitting comfortably, Ethan approached me with an idea. "Why don't we start our own company?" he suggested. "We can scoop up the business Thornton lost. You handle the design, I'll take care of the construction." Sophia and I ran the numbers. The idea made sense. And just like that, RJ Constructors was born. Ethan and I worked seamlessly together, and our business quickly grew. Not only did we take a chunk of Thornton's former clients, but we also beat him out on several major contracts. Ethan made sure people knew when we outperformed Thornton, and soon enough, our reputation soared. 5 years passed in a blur. Ethan dated here and there, but never settled down. He spent a lot of time with Sophia and me, often bringing along whatever girlfriend he was seeing at the time. Life was good. Sophia's career flourished. She was climbing the corporate ladder at a rapid pace, already a regional manager and a strong contender for VP. Everything seemed perfect. And then, one Tuesday, after wrapping up a lunch meeting with a potential client, I turned around and found myself face-to-face with none other than Victor Thornton. As I settled into my seat, Victor ordered us both drinks. I had no personal vendetta against him. After all, if Charlotte had thrown herself at him, it wasn't entirely his fault for giving in. I never fully bought into the idea that he had schemed to send Ethan away just to get to her. If anything, Charlotte had probably taken advantage of his position, showing up at his office under the guise of picking up Ethan's paycheck and making her intentions crystal clear. Not bad, I replied when he asked how business was going. Could always be better. Victor smirked and leaned back. Ever thought about selling? I raised an eyebrow. Selling? Why the hell would I do that? To make Ethan my partner. I let out a sharp laugh. Are you serious? Instead of answering, he pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. Take a look. I opened it, expecting financial figures or contract proposals. Instead, my breath caught in my throat. Photo after photo captured Sophia and Ethan, holding hands as they entered a motel, leaving together, sharing a kiss in public. My stomach twisted into knots. I'm sorry, Victor said, watching my reaction. I had someone tell Ethan, hoping to dig up dirt for payback. When the investigator gave me these, I didn't know she was your wife. But I knew from the ring she was married, so I had them track down her identity. I forced myself to keep my composure. Why? Victor sighed, his voice laced with bitterness. Because Ethan accused me of something I never actually did. Yes, I slept with Charlotte, but I didn't send him away on purpose. One day, she walked into my office, locked the door, and started taking her clothes off. She said, "You sent Ethan away, so you'll have to take care of me while he's gone." What was I supposed to do? I'm single and Charlotte is persuasive. I exhaled sharply, disgusted but not surprised. As far as I'm concerned, he continued, swirling his drink, this is Ethan's fault. Everyone knew what Charlotte was. He should have seen it coming. I clenched my jaw. Regardless, you slept with her. Why go after him now? Victor's eyes darkened. Because he ruined me with that lawsuit, and I want payback. I'm just sorry you got caught in the middle. He gestured to the photos. How long has this been going on? The investigator says at least a year. Maybe longer. A cold numbness settled over me. How could I have been so blind? Victor leaned forward, his expression almost sympathetic. If she never gave you a reason to be suspicious, how would you know? I stared at the table, my mind racing. Why do you want to buy me out? A slow smirk spread across his face. As Ethan's partner, I'd have equal say in every decision. If he wants A, I'll push for B. And since I'll have access to your pricing, I'll make sure my other company underbids you on every job. I'll bankrupt the business and leave Ethan with nothing. I frowned. And you? Victor chuckled. I've done the math. If the company fails, I'll recoup most of my investment by selling the assets. Plus, I'll profit from the contracts my other company takes from you. He took the last sip of his drink, then stood up. If you're interested in selling, let me know. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table, my mind spiraling. How had Sophia and Ethan carried this on for over a year without me knowing? Everything between us had seemed perfect. Had it always been a lie? I couldn't blindly trust Victor's information. He had every reason to twist the situation to his advantage. But I needed answers. I contacted a friend in insurance and got a referral for a private investigator. 13 days later, I had the truth. Ethan wasn't visiting job sites on Wednesdays. He was meeting Sophia at the Comfort Inn on Melrose. Every week. Same room. Same routine. How Sophia managed to slip away from work for these meetings, I had no idea. But now, I had to decide what to do next. I met with my lawyer for 2 hours, mapping out my options. Since we lived in a no-fault divorce state, everything would be split evenly. But my main priority was ensuring Sophia didn't get a dime from the sale of my company share. To make that happen, I had to bend the truth. I struck a deal with Victor. On paper, I sold my share for only a third of its actual value, funneling that amount into a personal bank account under my name. The remaining 2/3? That went straight into an offshore account I had set up beforehand. The arrangement was simple. Thornton wouldn't step foot into the office or touch my desk until the next morning. By the time Sophia and Ethan found out, it would already be done. When everything was finalized, I handed them their respective documents. Divorce papers for Sophia. A lawsuit for Ethan. She blinked at the papers in confusion. What is this? I met her gaze, my voice steady. Divorce. Citing infidelity. Ethan narrowed his eyes at the lawsuit in his hands. Alienation of affection? You've got to be kidding. I smirked. Not at all. No-fault laws may apply, but infidelity claims can still sway division of assets. It depends on the judge. Sophia scoffed, folding her arms. You don't have any proof. I raised an eyebrow. Don't I? She hesitated. I let the silence stretch before tossing the photos onto the table. Want to try that again? Her face paled. Ethan shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. I'm willing to bet a judge won't like these, I continued, voice calm. But just in case, I have a little extra insurance. Ethan frowned. What the hell does that mean? I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the moment. Comparing Victor's reports with my investigators, I found one constant. You two always use the same motel, the same room. So, I made arrangements. My investigator booked that room and set up hidden cameras. A generous tip to the motel staff ensured they'd place you there again. Sophia's eyes widened in horror. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Care to guess what was recorded? She swallowed hard, but I didn't wait for an answer. Standing up, I gathered the documents. The only thing left is how difficult you want to make this. If you fight me, this footage will be Exhibit A. Your choice. Ethan clenched his fists but stayed silent. Sophia exhaled shakily, her face ashen. What do you want? I gave her a cold smile. I already have everything I need. Then I walked out, leaving them to deal with the wreckage they had created. On Wednesday morning, I called Isabella, our receptionist. Let Ethan know I won't be in this morning. Dentist appointment. If I'm not feeling up to it after the extraction, I might skip the afternoon too. Got it, boss, she replied. Honestly, you should just go home and rest. Dental work is no joke. I chuckled, knowing full well I wasn't going anywhere near a dentist. Once Sophia left for work, I let the locksmith in and had all the locks changed. By 9 a.m., the job was done. Then I headed straight to the bank and drained our accounts, including the safety deposit box. My lawyer had advised me to take only half, but I wasn't feeling generous. Screw Sophia, she could fight for her share later. I also withdrew the amount I expected from the business sale. If Ethan wanted it back, he could take me to court. For now, I held all the cards. At exactly 12:10 p.m., my investigator called. They've arrived. Room 128. I met with him briefly outside the motel, then parked nearby. Sitting on the hood of a car, I waited. When they finally emerged from the room, my stomach clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. Ethan and Sophia both froze when they saw me. I didn't yell. I didn't get angry. I just walked toward them, stopping a few feet away. You really couldn't help yourselves, huh? My voice was steady, colder than I expected. Sophia swallowed hard, her face draining of color. Ethan shifted uncomfortably but stayed quiet. I shook my head. Not even worth the effort. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving them to their discomfort. But before I made it to my car, a man approached them and served them both with legal papers. Sophia's packet contained divorce papers and a temporary restraining order, barring her from coming within 500 feet of me or the house. To get that order, I had fabricated a story claiming I had overheard them plotting against me, discussing my insurance policy and my business assets. A hearing was pending, but until then, she was locked out of everything. Ethan's packet? A lawsuit for alienation of affection, along with a short, pointed note. You know how these things work, don't you? How does it feel to be on the receiving end for a change? As I drove away, I made one last call. It's done, I told Thornton. Enjoy your first day in the office tomorrow. Then I headed straight to the airport. I parked my car in long-term parking, tossed my phone into the glove compartment, and boarded a flight to Cabo San Lucas. For a week, I focused on nothing but scuba diving, lounging on the beach, and clearing my mind. No stress. No betrayal. Just me, the ocean, and a much-needed break from everything. When I finally turned my phone back on, it was flooded with voicemails. Most were from Sophia, though Ethan had left 4 messages too. I didn't bother listening. Would I have liked an explanation? Maybe. But at the end of the day, their reasons didn't matter. They made their choices. I made mine. After checking in with my lawyer, he informed me that Sophia had been desperately trying to contact me, begging to retrieve her belongings. At first, I considered letting the court supervise her visit to the house. Then, a better idea struck me. I called her directly. What do you want? I asked. I need my clothes and my things, she said, clearly frustrated. The court won't let me break in, and I don't have a key. I smirked. Don't bother. I donated everything to Goodwill. Didn't want any reminders of your lying, cheating self in my home. Her voice shot up an octave. You had no right to do that. I let my amusement show. Just like you had the right to stab me in the back. My voice dropped to a flat, final tone. We're done, Sophia. Goodbye. Of course, her belongings were still in the house. But she didn't need to know that. The satisfaction of messing with her was too good to pass up. Later, I called Isabella to check on the company. How's everything going over there? I asked. For me? Not bad. She replied wryly. For the company? A total disaster. Ethan and Victor are at each other's throats. They argue over everything. Ethan orders materials, and the second he leaves, Victor cancels them. Nothing's getting done because they're too busy fighting. I leaned back, amused. That bad? Oh, it gets worse, she added. I even resigned last week, but Victor doubled my salary to convince me to stay. Honestly, I'm just here for the chaos now. I chuckled. Why'd you stay? Isabella's voice turned serious. Because I never liked Ethan. He was always inappropriate with me. Even threatened to fire me once if I didn't go out with him. I shut him down, but he made my life miserable. My jaw clenched. You should have told me. There was no need, she said casually. I handled it. Then, after a brief pause, she added, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened with Sophia. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise for both of us. How do you figure? It means you're single, she teased. And maybe I'll finally get my shot. I laughed, caught off guard. I thought you were engaged. I was, she admitted. Until 3 weeks ago, when I caught him doing what Sophia did to you. Well, Isabella, I said, smiling despite myself. When I'm ready to date again, I'll make sure your name is at the top of the list. I'll hold you to that, she replied playfully. In the meantime, don't be a stranger. That day, my phone rang 16 times, 14 calls from Sophia, 2 from Ethan. I ignored them all. Whatever they had to say, I had no interest in hearing it. By the time I got home, I felt a strange sense of peace. I cooked dinner, poured myself a drink, and decided to check in with Victor. So, I asked, how's your grand plan unfolding? Victor's smirk was audible over the phone. Smoothly. I made sure I was sitting at Ethan's desk when he walked into the office. The second he saw me, his face turned red, and he stormed over. What the hell are you doing here? He barked. I leaned back in the chair, stretching out. Meet your new partner. Ethan's expression twisted like he'd swallowed something foul. His hands clenched as he snatched up the agreement and skimmed it. Watching the realization sink in was the best part of my week. Victor, lounging in the seat across from me, smirked. Oh, you should have seen it, Rob. He looked like he was about to explode. He chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. Things unraveled fast after that. He recounted the chaos. Ethan had placed an urgent fuel order for the Wilkins site, knowing their equipment was running low on diesel. As soon as he left, Victor canceled the order. By the time the first loader ran dry, Ethan was already shouting at the fuel company. When they told him it had been his own partner who had canceled it, they made it clear they wouldn't tolerate his attitude. Ethan stormed back to the office, demanding an explanation. Victor shrugged, told him their prices were too high. I was looking for a better deal. I chuckled. I take it he didn't like that answer? Victor smirked. Not one bit. We came to blows. I raised an eyebrow. And Victor hesitated, then let out a small laugh. I overestimated my chances. He got the better of me, but I got a few kicks in. He's gonna be sore for a while. I grinned. Keep at it. Everything's going according to plan. With that, I ended the call. That night, I sat in my office, updating my resume. I was done with that life. It was time for a fresh start. I had barely started when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Ethan standing there, looking uneasy, almost ashamed. What the hell do you want? I asked coldly. We need to talk. No, we don't. Rob, listen, he said. It wasn't my fault. Sophia came after me. I was in a bad place, angry about Charlotte. I wasn't thinking clearly. I'm sorry, but I didn't go after her. I laughed bitterly. Oh, so you just happened to fall into my wife's bed? Ethan's jaw tightened. I knew it was wrong, but you knew she was my wife? I cut him off. You knew exactly how it felt when Charlotte cheated on you, but you didn't stop to think how it would feel for me. I took a step closer. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? You were supposed to be my friend. Even if she threw herself at you, you should have had the decency to say no. I turned Charlotte down when she tried it with me. You should have done the same. Ethan flinched. I continued, my voice cold. Once might have been a mistake. A moment of weakness. But this wasn't once, was it? It was calculated, deliberate, and you kept doing it. Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. I know I messed up. I deserve the lawsuit. I deserve everything that's happening to me. But why'd you sell out to Thornton? I stared at him. Because if I hadn't, I might have handled things in a way that would have landed me in prison. My voice was dangerously calm. And you? You're not worth that. But I figured Thornton would give you the kind of misery that lasts longer than any fight. Then, without warning, I punched him. Grabbing his shirt, I yanked him inside, slammed the door shut, and finally let loose every ounce of rage I had been holding back. By the time I was done, Ethan was unconscious. I dragged him to his car, shoved him into the driver's seat, and walked back inside, feeling a grim satisfaction settle over me. If the cops showed up, I'd tell them he came at me first. His recent fight with Thornton would only help my case. The next morning, I sent out 14 resumes and called my attorney. The hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for Monday, but Sophia still hadn't retained legal representation. I thought about reaching out, but decided to wait. The longer she delayed, the stronger my position. By midweek, I was already getting responses. I flew to Atlanta for an interview on Wednesday and to Baltimore on Thursday. Both went well, but a call from a San Diego company caught my attention. I scheduled an interview for Tuesday and started picturing life in a place where the sun rarely took a day off. Monday's hearing came. The judge dismissed the restraining order, granting Sophia access to the house. She arrived with her lawyer, but the moment they approached me, I shut them down. You don't talk to me without my attorney, I said. Sophia hesitated. I just wanted to let you know I'll be coming by tonight. No, you won't, I replied flatly. I'm flying out this afternoon. I won't be back until Wednesday. You can come after 6. Her lawyer started to argue, but I wasn't in the mood. She won't step foot in that house unless someone from the court is present. She can wait 2 more days. Sophia glanced at her lawyer and shook her head. It's fine. I can wait, she said quietly. Wednesday evening, Sophia showed up with her attorney's assistant and a court-appointed observer. The observer introduced herself. I'm here to document anything Sophia removes from the house. I smirked. That's unnecessary. She can take whatever she wants. The woman raised an eyebrow. If that's the case, why make her wait? I met her gaze without hesitation. Because she betrayed me. She didn't just cheat. She did it with someone I thought was my best friend. I couldn't destroy her life without risking jail, but I could make her feel some of the pain she caused me. Call it petty, but it's all I've got. Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. I let Sophia and the legal observer inside, then walked outside and spent the next hour mowing the lawn. By the time I came back in, they were gone, except Sophia. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea like she had every right to be there. She looked up. You lied. I leaned against the counter. About what? You didn't donate my things to Goodwill. I smirked. Maybe not, but I sure enjoyed watching you freak out over it. She exhaled, setting down her cup. Sorting through everything was more complicated than I thought. It's going to take longer than I expected. I pulled my house key from my pocket, slid it across the table. No rush. You can have the house by Friday. I'll be gone by then. Her eyes flicked to me. Why are you doing this? I've been interviewing for jobs, I said simply. Once I get one, I'm leaving the state. That's not what I mean. She met my gaze. Why go through all of this? The restraining order, the lies about donating my things. I gave her a slow, steady look. Because you deserved it. I crossed my arms and stared at Sophia. That's a stupid question. After what you did, I had to do something to get back at you. You should be grateful I handled it this way and not with violence. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Dragging me through all this nonsense doesn't make us even, she said. But I guess it's what you needed to do. She exhaled and then met my gaze. Still, I think we need to talk. I scoffed. We have nothing to talk about. Sophia ignored that. I know you said no earlier, but I'm going to try to convince you that we don't have to go through with this divorce. I shook my head, almost laughing at how delusional she sounded. Be serious, Sophia. There's no way I can stay married to you after what you did. That doesn't matter, she said quickly. I love you, Rob. You know I do. What happened with Ethan was a mistake. A stupid, thoughtless mistake. I've always liked Ethan, but I never loved him. I love you. I stared at her, incredulous. It doesn't matter whether you loved him or not. You still cheated. She flinched, but I pressed on. You had to know how I'd feel about that, especially after how pissed I was when Charlotte betrayed Ethan. Remember how I wanted to tell him? And you talked me out of it. That should have clued you in. And don't feed me that. I didn't want you to find out crap. Cheaters always get caught. Ethan found out about Charlotte because someone told him, just like someone told me about you. Sophia's eyes shimmered with emotion. Doesn't the fact that I love you count for anything? No, Sophia, it doesn't, I said flatly. Because your so-called love wasn't enough to stop you from betraying me. Her voice rose, growing desperate. It didn't mean anything, Rob. It was just sex. A meaningless mistake. I shook my head, disgusted. An accident? Really? I let out a dry laugh. Tell me, how does sleeping with my best friend repeatedly qualify as an accident? Sophia sighed and finally began her confession. Ethan came by while you were in Santa Fe. He was in a terrible mood over Charlotte, missing her despite everything. We had a drink, and he started crying. I hugged him, trying to comfort him, but it felt good. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. She looked down, almost ashamed. The next time you went out of town, we both knew why he was coming over. It was never about love. It was just the excitement, the secrecy. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I never neglected you, Rob. I love you. We don't have to end things. We can fix this. I laughed bitterly. Fix it how? I'll never trust you again, Sophia. If I stayed, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if you'd do it again. And based on what you just admitted, you didn't stop because you regretted it. You stopped because you got caught. I shook my head. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? You already broke the most important promise we made when we got married. Her jaw tightened. I'm not giving up, she said firmly. I'll fight for us. My lawyer says the court can order counseling, and I know it will help. We'll get through this, Rob. I'm not letting you go. I sighed, exasperated. You still don't get it. This isn't about love. I'll admit, I still love you. She perked up at that, but I cut her hope down immediately. But I can't live with you. Every time I look at you, I'll remember what you did with Ethan. And I can't live like that. Her expression darkened, and then she smirked, cold, calculated. If you go through with this divorce, she said, I'll release the video of what you did to Ethan. I narrowed my eyes. You're bluffing. Am I? She challenged, tilting her head. Without another word, I walked to my office, retrieved a copy of the security footage from my briefcase, and handed it to her. Here, I said. Watch it. Then decide if you really want to show it to anyone else. Her confidence faltered. I turned and walked away. You can pick up the house on Friday, I called over my shoulder. But for now, you need to leave. Over the next 2 days, I packed up my belongings, moved most of them into storage, and checked into an extended stay apartment. I wasn't planning to stay long, just enough time to figure out my next move. For the next 2 weeks, I traveled across the country for job interviews in Salt Lake City, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, and Detroit. The interviews went well, but none of the companies responded right away. One night, sitting at my desk, I reviewed my finances and realized I could easily survive for 6 years without working. If I relocated somewhere with a lower cost of living, I could stretch that to 8, maybe even 10. The idea of a fresh start, far away from Sophia and the mess she created, was becoming more appealing by the second. Eventually, Sophia signed the divorce papers and sent them back to my attorney. For a brief moment, I almost wished she hadn't. A petty part of me would have loved to scatter CDs of her and Ethan's motel escapades all over the house for her to find. But a deal was a deal. As per the agreement, we split everything 50/50ths. Each of us covered our own legal fees. Since I was the one who filed, I ate the cost of my lawyer. Sophia got the house. That worked out fine, since my share of the equity roughly matched what I still owed the bank. True, I had to give her half of what I made selling my stake in the company, but I had planned ahead for that. The other 2/3 were safely tucked away in an offshore account. Through the grapevine, I heard an amusing bit of gossip. After I left, Ethan started mistreating Sophia so badly that she had to file a restraining order against him. The irony was delicious. I didn't care what happened to either of them, but the fact that Ethan, who once swore Sophia was different, ended up treating her just like Charlotte, that made me laugh. For now, I decided to hold off on any major decisions until the divorce was officially finalized. Then, the job offers started coming in. San Diego seemed like the best option, and I was about to book my follow-up flight when my phone buzzed. It was Victor Thornton. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "How'd you like to own your old company again?" he asked. I leaned back, intrigued. "I'm listening." When Victor called offering me back my old company, I couldn't help but laugh. "Why on earth would I want it back?" I asked. "I sold it to you to get away from Ethan. Why would I willingly make myself his partner again?" Victor chuckled. "You wouldn't have to. After our last blow-up, I told Ethan if he hated working with me so much, I'd buy him out or sell his half to someone else. He didn't even hesitate, took the money and ran. Sold it to me for half of what I paid you." That made me laugh even harder. "And why should I be interested? If you did even half of what you said you would to make Ethan's life miserable, the company's probably worth nothing now." "You might be surprised," Victor said. "Come by the office and we'll talk." Curiosity got the better of me, so I went. The moment I walked in, Isabella jumped up from her desk and wrapped me in a hug before poking her head into Victor's office to announce my arrival. Victor wasted no time. "Look, I only bought your half of the company to mess with Ethan," he admitted. "I never wanted him as a partner, but things changed. I'm focusing more on construction now, and I've moved all the equipment and projects to my other company. That left me wondering what to do with the engineering side. Why not start fresh?" I asked. Victor smirked. "That was the plan. But then I figured, why not just sell it back to you?" I shook my head. "I don't think I can afford that. I can't pay for both halves." "You don't have to," he said. "The company's value has dropped since I stripped it down. I'll sell it to you for what I paid Ethan and throw in a 5-year contract for engineering services. Plus, the company still has contracts with about 15 other firms. You'd be walking into a ready-made client base." When he named the price, I realized it was less than what I had stashed in my offshore account. "There's one condition," Victor added. "I talked this over with Isabella. If you take the deal, she stays with you instead of transferring to my company." I glanced at Isabella. She was watching me, amusement dancing in her eyes. "I don't need time to think," I said. "I'm in, but I won't finalize anything until my divorce is settled, which will take another 3 weeks." "That works for me," Victor said with a grin. As I turned to leave, Isabella stopped me. "Don't forget," she teased. 3 weeks from now, you promised I'd be first on your list." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't think you were serious about that." Her smile lit up the room. "Oh, I'm very serious." As I drove away, my phone rang again. This time my lawyer. "Ethan finally learned his lesson," he said. "He reached out with an offer to settle the lawsuit." I smirked. "Take it." Back at my temporary apartment, I couldn't stop smiling. In 3 weeks, I'd be starting over. New life, new job, money in the bank. I could have spent that time house hunting and furniture shopping, but for now, I was just enjoying the way everything had fallen into place. Now, as I sit in my office, surrounded by blueprints and projects I once only dreamed of, I can't help but marvel at how far I've come. The past year feels like a distant storm, violent, relentless, but I've come out on the other side, not just surviving, but thriving. The betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, they were all bricks in the road that led me here, lessons I didn't know I needed to learn. Isabella's laughter echoes from the next room as she answers the phone. She's been a constant in this new chapter, dependable, steady. We're taking things slow, but there's a warmth between us that feels right. It's not a fiery, whirlwind romance, but something steadier, something real. Funny how life works. The person I needed was always just a few steps away. Professionally, the company has become a blank slate for me to rebuild. No Ethan. No Sophia. No toxicity dragging me down. I've found a clarity I didn't realize I was missing, assembling a team that shares my vision, people who value integrity as much as I do. Contracts are rolling in. My name is solid again. And I built this. Occasionally, memories of Sophia and Ethan creep in. Unbidden, unwelcome, but they don't sting anymore. Time has dulled the edges of their betrayal, leaving me with lessons instead of wounds. From Sophia, I learned that love without trust is nothing. From Ethan, I learned that even the strongest bonds can snap under the weight of selfishness and deceit. Through the grapevine, I hear whispers of their lives. Ethan's bounced between jobs, his reputation in shambles. Sophia? Last I heard, she moved out of state, trying to start over. I wish them well not out of forgiveness, but because their stories are no longer tied to mine. I've untangled myself from their chaos, and I have no intention of looking back. As for me, my days are fuller than ever. I've started mentoring younger engineers, guiding them through the challenges I once faced. On weekends, Isabella and I explore local trails, or lose ourselves in long conversations over coffee. There's a lightness in my life now, a sense of purpose, unclouded by doubt or regret. The scars are still there, of course, faint reminders of what I endured, but I wear them now, quiet proof that I faced the storm and came out stronger. If I've learned anything, it's that endings are rarely the end. They're just beginnings in disguise. And for the first time in a long, long while, I'm excited about what's next. Whatever it is, I know I'll face it with the strength I've gained, the lessons I've learned, and the right people by my side. Life isn't about the storms we survive. It's about the skies we find afterward. And right now, my skies have never been clearer.